The Dwyer estate sat like a palace on the hill, its marble steps and towering glass windows reflecting the late morning sun. From a distance it looked serene. But anyone who worked there knew the truth: inside chaos ruled. High-pitched laughter echoed through the manicured gardens. Not the sweet, innocent kind, but sharp, daring, almost challenging. 3 small figures darted past the open French doors, each clutching something they clearly should not have. The sound of a maid's shriek followed, then the slam of the back gate. The neighborhood whispered about this house. Not because of Gabriel Dwyer's billions or his luxury empire, but because of his 8-year-old triplets. Identical in looks, united in mischief, they had driven away every single maid who dared to work here. Some left humiliated, others in tears. None lasted longer than 2 weeks. But on this morning, a battered sedan pulled up the long, winding driveway. Its paint was faded, one side mirror held together with tape. The engine clicked as it cooled, and from the driver's seat stepped a woman with calm eyes and steady hands. Claire Matthews, a single mother. She paused at the foot of those marble steps, studying the mansion like a soldier about to enter enemy territory. By the end of the week, one of 2 things would happen. The billionaire's triplets would break her like they had all the others, or she would change their lives forever. And somewhere weeks from now, there would come a day when those same children, those wild, untamable forces, would cling to her, refusing to let go. But no one inside this house was ready for what was about to happen. The Dwyer estate was the kind of place that made delivery drivers slow down just to stare. A sweeping stone driveway curved around a marble fountain where water leapt in perfect arcs. Polished columns framed the grand double doors, and manicured hedges stood in precise formation, as if nature itself had been trained to obey. From the outside it was flawless. But beyond those polished doors lay a battlefield. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and something else: trouble. In the grand hallway, expensive Persian rugs bore the faint stains of juice spills, tiny muddy footprints darted across the white marble, and the faint sound of muffled giggling drifted from somewhere upstairs. The Dwyer triplets, Liam, Noah and Ava, were 8 years old, identical in face, but the similarities ended there. Liam, the eldest by 5 minutes, carried himself like a commander in the making, always plotting the next move. Noah, the middle child, had a spark in his eyes that meant danger for anything breakable. And Ava, smallest in frame but sharpest in tongue, could cut a person down with a single sentence before flashing the sweetest smile. United, they were a force of nature, and their united mission seemed to be driving away anyone tasked with caring for them. "This is the 14th maid in 6 months, muttered Mrs. Carter, the long-serving housekeeper, as she spoke to Gabriel Dwyer in his home office. "Sir, I do not know how much longer I can keep finding replacements." Gabriel, seated behind an imposing walnut desk, pinched the bridge of his nose. His silver cufflinks gleamed against the dark fabric of his suit, but the tension in his shoulders told another story. 14, he repeated, almost to himself. "I am running out of options." Mrs. Carter sighed. "They are spirited." Spirited was one word for it. The last maid had quit mid-shift, her apron still hanging in the kitchen, muttering something about 3 devils and angel masks as she walked out the door. Before her, there had been the one who lasted 2 days before locking herself in the pantry to cry after Noah replaced her sugar jar with salt. Another left after Liam orchestrated an indoor rainstorm, using nothing but the upstairs bathroom tap and an impressive lack of supervision. And then there was Ava, who once managed to convince a new maid that the house was haunted just to watch her scream. Gabriel knew each story, but hearing them replayed felt like another weight pressing down on him. He was not a cruel man, anyone who truly knew him understood that. But since his wife, Isabella, had passed away 4 years ago, he had been split in 2. One half buried in his billion-dollar business empire, the other half trying and often failing to be both mother and father to 3 grieving children. In truth, he blamed himself. He had been away on business the night Isabella's heart failed her. The guilt had settled in his bones like frost, and no matter how many deals he closed or homes he filled with staff, he could not shake the sense that he had abandoned them when they needed him most. And the children, well, they had found their own way of coping. Their defiance was armor. Their chaos was a language one Gabriel had not yet learned to translate. From somewhere above, a crash echoed through the house, followed by a chorus of laughter. Gabriel closed his eyes briefly. "What now?" Mrs. Carter's lips pressed into a thin line. "Perhaps, sir, we need someone different. Someone unshakable." Gabriel leaned back in his chair, staring out the tall window at the sprawling gardens. "If such a person exists," he murmured, "send them my way." Neither of them knew it yet, But that person was already on her way up the winding driveway, a woman with calm eyes, a battered car, and a determination stronger than any marble column in the Dwyer estate. And the triplets, for all their mischief and might, were about to meet their match. Claire Matthews was used to keeping her head above water, just not when the tide kept rising. At 32, she had mastered the art of stretching a dollar, of making every meal last a day longer than it should, of smiling at her daughter even when her stomach growled louder than the kettle. Emily, her 6-year-old, never saw the weight behind her mother's eyes. She only knew that Mom made the best pancakes and could fix a scraped knee faster than anyone. But lately, Claire's well of solutions was running dry. 2 weeks ago, the small boutique hotel where she worked as head housekeeper had been sold to a new owner who wanted his own people. In one polite but cold conversation, years of service vanished. Now the bills were stacking in uneven piles on the kitchen counter, the rent due in 12 days, and the old Corolla she drove coughed like it had been smoking for 20 years. On a Tuesday morning after dropping Emily at school, Claire sat in the library with her laptop, scrolling through job listings. Most paid too little, some required degrees she didn't have, and others were hours away. She was halfway through her third cup of coffee when she saw it. Housekeeper wanted, private estate, full-time, excellent pay. Her eyes widened at the weekly rate. It was more than she had ever made in a month at the hotel. The job included room and board. But then her eyes caught the line in parentheses. Previous experience with children preferred. Position may require handling energetic young residents. A quick online search of the Dwyer estate brought up glossy magazine photos and gossip column headlines. And there it was, article after article about the billionaire's unmanageable triplets, and the parade of maids who had fled the job. Most people would have closed the listing right there. Claire didn't. She bookmarked it, closed her eyes for a moment and thought of Emily. Her daughter needed stability, not another stretch of uncertainty. 2 days later, she was driving up the long, winding driveway in her patched-up Corolla. The paint was faded, the air conditioning wheezed, and one side mirror was still secured with duct tape. But she had ironed her blouse until there wasn't a wrinkle in sight and pulled her hair into a neat bun. Inside the estate, Gabriel Dwyer sat in the living room, flipping through her resume. It was modest, hotel housekeeping, private residences, a short stint managing a small bed and breakfast. But the references glowed, noting her patience, work ethic, and discretion. Mrs. Carter led Claire in. She stood straight, hands clasped calmly in front of her, her presence quiet but firm. "Mr. Dwyer," she said with a nod. Gabriel gestured for her to sit, his expression neutral. "I appreciate you coming in. You've heard the rumors, I assume?" "I have," Claire replied simply. "And you still applied?" "I did." He raised an eyebrow. "Most people read about my children and run the other way." "I am not most people," she said not unkindly. From the grand staircase behind them came the faint creak of movement. Gabriel didn't turn, but Claire's eyes flicked up. 3 small faces peeked between the banister posts, identical, curious, and not at all subtle. Liam, Noah, and Ava Dwyer, observing like a jury awaiting evidence. Mrs. Carter glanced toward the stairs. "Children." Before she could finish, a small rubber ball sailed down the steps, landing at Claire's feet. She bent, picked it up, and without looking at the trio rolled it gently back. A moment later, another ball followed. She caught this one midair. Gabriel's eyes narrowed slightly, studying her. "You will find that they test boundaries." "They're children," Claire said, her voice steady. "Testing boundaries is how they learn where they are." The triplets exchanged quick glances. This was not the flustered reaction they were used to. From the stairs came a stage whisper from Noah. "She's boring." Claire's mouth twitched, just enough to hint at a smile. "Or maybe I am not as easy to rattle as you think." She still didn't look at them directly, and somehow that made them lean forward, watching her more intently. Gabriel shifted the papers on his lap. "The position is demanding. I travel often. You would be responsible not only for maintaining the house but also for managing their energy." "I managed a staff of 12 in a hotel during peak season," Claire said. "Your home may be bigger, but I imagine the principle is the same: organization, consistency, and not making promises I cannot keep." Ava's small voice drifted down. "We can make her quit in 3 days." Without missing a beat, Claire finally looked up at them. "If you can do it in 2, she said evenly, "I will personally bake you a cake before I leave." Silence. The triplets froze, uncertain if she was joking or challenging them. Liam's eyes narrowed just a fraction, sizing her up. Gabriel glanced between his children and the woman in front of him. Something shifted in the air, an almost imperceptible curiosity. "When can you start?" he asked. Claire met his gaze. "Tomorrow morning." Driving away from the estate, Claire's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The pay was good, the room and board meant she could save money, and the location was perfect for Emily's school. But this wasn't going to be easy, not with 3 children who had turned driving away caretakers into an art form. Still, she had faced worse storms. She remembered the months after Emily's father left, the quiet nights of rocking her baby while wondering how to afford diapers. She remembered the humiliating days when a single bounce check meant skipping her own meals so Emily wouldn't go hungry. No, Claire Matthews was not easily broken. And for Emily, she would walk into that house every day with her head high, no matter what waited for her inside. At the Dwyer estate, the triplets huddled in their room. "She's different," Ava murmured. "Doesn't mean she'll last," Liam said, but there was no certainty in his tone. Noah grinned, already plotting. "We'll see." For the first time in months, it wasn't just the staff who were curious. Morning sunlight spilled through the Dwyer estate's tall windows as Claire stepped inside for her first official day. She wore simple black trousers, a crisp white blouse, and an expression as steady as the stone lions guarding the front gate. Emily walked beside her, clutching a worn lunchbox and looking up at the grand chandelier as if it might swing down like something from a fairy tale. Mrs. Carter greeted them in the foyer, her voice polite but laced with the tone of a woman who had seen this play out before. "Breakfast is in the dining room. Good luck." The triplets were already there, seated like miniature royalty at the far end of the long mahogany table. Their identical faces betrayed nothing, but Claire caught the quick, sideways glance they shared. The air buzzed with the kind of anticipation one feels just before a storm. It began with the juice. Claire was carrying a tray of fresh orange juice glasses toward the table when Liam accidentally knocked his spoon onto the floor. As she bent to pick it up, Noah's hand tipped a glass just far enough for golden liquid to arc through the air, missing her by inches. Without flinching, Claire caught the glass mid-tip, set it upright, and placed a napkin beside it. "Careful," she said calmly, as if it were a genuine accident. "You might spill it on yourselves and then you'd have to help clean it." They blinked at her. No scolding. No panic. Just a soft boundary wrapped in courtesy. The rest of the morning was a minefield. In the laundry room, Claire found a bottle of chocolate syrup emptied into the washing machine. She glanced at the sticky mess, then at the 3 small faces peeking from the doorway. "Interesting choice," she said. "It will take an hour to clean this. Which of you would like to learn how to scrub a machine properly?" Silence. Then, to their mild horror, she handed each of them a sponge and a bucket of soapy water. 10 minutes later, the chocolate syrup was gone, and so was their smugness. By mid-morning, Emily's attempt to join their game of hide-and-seek ended with the triplets locking her in a guest bedroom, just for fun. Claire heard the muffled knocking, opened the door and looked at them evenly. "In this house," she said, "no one gets left behind, not even as a joke. You may choose, either you play a game everyone enjoys or you find something else to do." Her tone was calm, but there was no mistaking the firmness in it. For a moment they stared back, testing the edge of her patience. When she did not yield, Ava muttered, "Fine," and stomped toward the garden. The afternoon brought their most elaborate scheme yet. One shoe from each of her pairs mysteriously vanished. Claire found them dangling from a tree branch in the backyard. She stood beneath them, hands on hips, considering. Then, instead of calling for help, she fetched a broom, nudged the shoes down, and lined them neatly on the back porch. At dinner that evening, she served dessert first. 3 pairs of eyes widened. "What's this for?" Noah asked suspiciously. "For winning the game," Claire replied. "What game?" Ava frowned. "The one where you try to throw me off and I keep going anyway." She smiled just slightly. "I won today. Tomorrow maybe you'll win." They had no idea how to respond to that. From his office, Gabriel observed bits and pieces of the day, her carrying in folded laundry without complaint, her handling the chocolate syrup disaster without calling for him, the way Emily trailed behind her with a quiet sort of safety in her eyes. Still, he remained cautious. He had seen other employees start strong and crumble in days. Patience could be a mask. And in his experience, the mask always slipped. But there was something different here. He noticed the way the triplets seemed unsettled. They were still pushing, still prodding, but the usual glee in their mischief was tempered with something else, curiosity. That night, Claire tucked Emily into bed in their small upstairs room. "How was your day, sweetheart?" Emily hesitated. "They didn't want to play with me." "They don't know you yet," Claire said gently, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Sometimes people need time to learn they can trust someone new." Emily nodded, though her eyes stayed thoughtful. Down the hall in the triplets' shared bedroom, Liam whispered to his siblings, "She's still here." "For now," Noah said, though his voice lacked conviction. Ava stared at the ceiling. "She doesn't yell." No one replied. They all knew this was going to be a different kind of battle. It happened slowly, like the first hints of spring after a long winter. Claire began to notice things, not just the mischief but the pauses in between. The way Liam's eyes flickered to Gabriel's empty chair at dinner before quickly looking away. How Noah's pranks were always more elaborate when Gabriel was home, as if the chaos might force his father to notice him. And Ava never caused trouble when she was alone. Instead, Claire would sometimes catch her sitting quietly in the hallway, clutching a small locket with a photo of a woman who looked exactly like her. She didn't confront them with these observations. Instead, she adjusted her days in subtle ways. For Liam, she gave responsibility, a map of the garden, asking him to supervise Emily and Noah during their scavenger hunt. For Noah, she offered challenges, a homemade obstacle course in the backyard that had him racing against his own best time. And for Ava, she simply created space, sitting with her while she colored, never pushing, just listening when the little girl began to speak in soft, halting sentences about Mama. The real shift came on a breezy afternoon when a kite got stuck in the tallest oak tree on the property. Noah, ever the daredevil, decided he could climb up and get it. He was halfway up when the branch beneath him creaked sharply. Gabriel wasn't home. Mrs. Carter shouted for help. But before panic could ripple through the house, Claire was already in the garden. "Noah," she called up, her voice steady as stone. "You're fine. Look at me." He froze, breathing fast. "3 steps back down," she instructed. "Slow. Good. Now hold still." She climbed halfway up herself, not recklessly, but with the calm assurance of someone who'd scaled more than a few trees in her life, and reached him. "Gotcha," she murmured, guiding him to the ground. Her hands stayed firm on his shoulders until his feet touched the grass. Only then did she let go. For a moment he just stared at her. "You didn't yell." "Did you need me to?" she asked. He shook his head, still catching his breath. And something unspoken passed between them, a small, unexpected trust. That evening, Emily wandered into the art room and found Ava sitting cross-legged on the floor with a box of paints. For a long minute, neither spoke. Then Emily knelt and began sketching a sunflower. Ava watched quietly before reaching for a brush. By the time Claire peeked in an hour later, the two girls were side by side, covered in streaks of yellow paint, giggling over their masterpiece. Ava glanced up at Claire, not with suspicion, but with the tentative smile of a child who had decided, just maybe, that a new friend was worth keeping. Dinner that night was different. The triplets sat with Emily at the far end of the table, a haphazard centerpiece of wildflowers between them. Stories spilled out, Noah exaggerating his kite rescue until Liam rolled his eyes, Ava describing their sunflower painting with unusual animation. Emily laughed, a sound that carried across the long table like music. Gabriel, seated at the head, found himself pausing between bites, simply watching. He hadn't seen this in years, his children leaning toward each other instead of pulling away, their eyes bright not from mischief but from joy. Claire said nothing about it. She simply refilled water glasses and let the moment breathe. When dinner ended, the triplets didn't scatter. They lingered, asking if Emily could stay up for a board game. Gabriel caught Claire's eye across the table. She offered a small nod, and for once he didn't argue. Later, as Gabriel passed the open doorway to the family room, he saw them all together on the rug, Liam explaining the rules, Noah making up new ones, Ava curled against Emily's side. Claire sat on the couch, sewing a button back onto Noah's shirt, her expression calm and content. For the first time in a long while, the house didn't feel like a battlefield. And though Gabriel would never say it aloud, not yet, he was starting to wonder if the woman who'd walked up his driveway in a battered car might just be the one to do what no one else had managed. It was a Thursday morning when Gabriel's phone call came. An urgent deal required his presence overseas, 7 days minimum. He stood in the foyer, suitcase by his side, giving Claire a list of instructions she barely needed. "They've made progress," he said quietly, glancing toward the kitchen where the triplets and Emily were eating breakfast. "I don't want to lose that." "You won't," she assured him. But neither of them saw the shadow lingering in the background, Carla, a former housemaid who had been dismissed weeks earlier for neglecting her duties. She had slipped in to drop off a uniform she forgot, to return and in passing, bent low to whisper to the triplets. "She'll leave you too," Carla murmured, just loud enough for them to hear. "They all do. Wait and see." The seed was planted. By the second day the house felt different. The triplets avoided Claire's eyes, muttered between themselves and ignored her requests. By the third day the chaos returned, juice spilled on purpose, homework accidentally shredded, muddy footprints tracked through every hallway. Emily, caught in the middle, watched her mother quietly navigate the storm. That evening, after Noah slammed his bedroom door and Liam refused to come down for dinner, Claire stood in the doorway of their shared room. "Enough," she said softly. Not loud, but firm enough to halt even Ava's whispered complaints. She stepped inside. "You think I'm going to leave? That's why you're doing this. Because if I quit first, you don't have to watch me walk away later." Liam looked down at his hands. Noah scowled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Ava clutched her locket. Claire knelt so she was level with them. "I know what it's like to be left behind." When Emily was 2, her father left. No note. No goodbye. Just gone. And for months I woke up every day wondering what was wrong with me. Wondering why I wasn't worth staying for. Her voice didn't waver. But I learned something. People who love you don't run when things get messy. They stay. Even when it's hard. Especially then. The silence was thick, the kind that makes every sound sharper, the ticking of the clock, the faint hum of the air conditioner. "I'm not leaving," she said finally. "You can test me all you want. You can make a mess, you can shout, you can try to push me away. But I will still be here tomorrow morning." No one spoke. But when she stood to leave, Ava's small voice followed her. "Good night, Claire." It was the first time any of them had said her name like that, soft, almost warm. When Gabriel returned a week later, he braced himself for damage control. Instead, he found his children playing a board game with Emily in the sunlit family room. Claire sat beside them, sipping tea, laughter filling the space. For the first time in years, Gabriel saw not just order in his home, but happiness. The morning after Gabriel returned, the house woke before Claire. She stepped into the hallway to find it unusually quiet, too quiet. In the kitchen, a scene unfolded that made her pause. The triplets stood behind the counter, plates in hand, a slightly lopsided stack of pancakes steaming in the center of the table. Emily sat beside them, grinning, holding a tray with a mug of tea and a folded card decorated with crayon hearts. "We made breakfast," Liam announced, trying to sound casual but failing to hide his pride. Claire set the tray down and opened the card. Inside, in a mix of uneven handwriting, were 3 words: "We love you." Her throat tightened. Gabriel stepped into the doorway, watching the scene with a rare softness in his eyes. When she looked up, he met her gaze. "Stay," he said simply. "Not as the help. As our household manager. As part of the family." For a long moment, the noise of the room seemed to fade. Then Claire smiled, and the triplets, her triplets now in all but name, burst into chatter about what games they would play that afternoon. Emily laughed with them, no longer on the outside looking in. The narrator's voice settles over the final image. True authority does not come from the loudest voice in the room, nor the strictest rules. It comes from empathy, from the patience to stay when walking away would be easier. Hearts that have been broken can be mended, not by force, but by love that refuses to quit. And as the camera lingers on the family gathered around the kitchen table, the closing line falls like a quiet truth. Sometimes the fiercest battles are not won by power, but by the steady hands that choose to stay.